While he's walking up, I want to welcome Dane Atkinson. I'll let him tell you more of his background as we chat. But Dane was the CEO of Squarespace from 2007 to 2011, right years, and has founded a whole bunch of companies throughout his life. Most recently was running a company called Sumall, which is now morphed into a new company called Adecco. And I'm very happy to, well, Robin, I won't steal your thunder, but GGV is going to be investing in Dane's new company, so led by Robin Lee, who's now here from GGV. So, you have your mic?
I do. There we go.
So we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but I know one thing when you and I chatted that you're particularly passionate about is the psychology of the SMB.
Yep.
So Lear talked about the brand. We've talked a lot of Sarah talked about segmentation. Talk about what does that mean to you? So when you say the psychology of the SMB, you've been dealing with SMBs for a decade now. You were in it before it was cool. And so what does that mean for you? And how is it impacted the way you're launching your new business, which I'd love for you to talk about as well, and how you guys are going after SMBs with Adecco.
Okay, sure. Well, before I get into that, I just want to thank everybody here for trying to do such great work. I think we've forgotten that the SMEs are basically us. They're human beings who want to make the world better. They strive to make this a better planet. They strive to innovate. They create most of the jobs. Everybody knows the TAM. They try to create all the inventions. Like the work that everybody here is doing is remarkable because they need the help more than anybody else, and they make our world better. So the psychology, that's part of it, is understanding that they are us. They're the dreamer. They're the creator, but they're in a house that's on fire, right? They are super stressed. They're, as we heard the P analogy earlier, life is tricky for them. But they're also this hybrid of consumer and enterprise personality, right? So when we were doing Squarespace, there is this aspiration to be beautiful, to be great, and to understand that they need to be thanked for their effort and given a platform that they can be fantastic on. But at the same time, they want an enterprise product. They want a product that's 10 times as powerful as what the enterprise CMSs are, just from the simplicity standpoint. So you get caught in this weird hybrid where you have this dramatic desire to do amazing things, but the personality of a consumer. So finding your way through those two can be very, very tricky. And I think, as everybody said today, the thread is just living with those customers as deeply as you can to understand the nuances of what drives their psychology.
Can you talk, maybe start a little bit on Adecco and the problem you guys are solving and how you've thought about the business? Because it's been in the works for a little while, and I think it'll help give people some context into that question about psychology of the SMB. Because you guys are solving a very hard problem to solve, and going after a very hard demographic, which we all are here. But just talk about what you guys are doing.
So I'll start with a story of failure. My last company, called Sumall, was an analytics platform for small businesses. It was huge. So we had 500,000 small businesses. It adds 50,000 small businesses a month. It didn't do a thing for anybody. It was worthless. And the problem was that we provided data that they couldn't ingest. And no matter how much we tried to make that data valuable in a way they could see it, like stop buying Twitter ads not working, they'd still buy Twitter ads. We built this like gigantic screen that said stop buying Twitter ads. And they'd say, okay. And the next week they buy Twitter ads again. We're like, it's not working. So we'd like call them up and be like, what are you doing? Like, I lost the password. Or my cousin Vinny said it worked. Or like, we just learned so much about the customer's inability to leverage our tools and the necessity for us to take over the work for them. So in Adecco, our new company, we built a prediction system off the same API that allows it to see what a coffee shop in particular, as our first category, was going to sell in the days ahead. But we didn't just give them that information. We didn't just say, you need to have 10 croissants and 5 donuts. We took over the ordering part of the process. So we took over the entire system so that they didn't have to do anything. So even though there's a financial impact we see from earlier customers, it's the fact that one of their 3 big problems disappeared because they didn't have to think about it at all. So I think from a technology standpoint, especially in the day, like when we started Squarespace, there was an average of 3 SaaS platforms for each of our customers. They had like a very limited number of tools. The average is now 14. Right? So our customers are spending a lot of money on credit cards and a lot of different services that are point solutions that are extremely frustrating because there's no consolidation. So you have to bring it. You have to like cure their problem. And a big part of that is just taking the work out of it as much as humanly possible, like making it feel simple and consumer and powerful.
And that problem, that problem you're trying to solve with the kind of their supply chain, order management. I mean, this is like, labor and supply are 2 big complex problems for SMB merchants. What kind of research did you have to do to figure out? I mean, it's a problem for them for a reason. It's hard, right? They're small, they have no buying power, they don't deal with logistics, they don't like software. How did you guys do the research to figure out that that was worth going after, and then think about the way you would productize that from a technology standpoint?
So I have ADHD. So I've owned a coffee shop and a bar and a restaurant, all these other things. So I had a good experience with how stressful that would be. And we went and found a company called Birch, which is like small coffee shop, and we just lived in it, like literally just sat in it all day long and talked to them about what they were feeling. And they had those two problems. It was staff and it was inventory. Staff is scary as all hell, so we picked inventory to start with for quite a lot of reasons. And we didn't actually know what the hell we're doing. We just thought we could start there. Like no company, I've had the fortune of making a lot of these. Not very all of them worked. Lots of them do. Don't worry. Don't stress. But it's never the company we start out with is the company that we ended up with, right? It's just never, ever, ever been what you think it is what you end up with. So we just started. We just jumped in and said, let's predict your inventory and start ordering it. And then we suddenly realized that our average coffee shop spends $28,000 a month on inventory. It should cost them $18,000 a month. They throw out 30% of the perishables they buy every single night. It goes out past the homeless person on the street in a garbage bag, so the homeless person doesn't know it's there, so they don't sit and stock them. Like these are material problems to them, and they've got all their staff. We just signed up a coffee shop called Gregory's all around New York. At noon, the staff panics because they have to get their orders in, so they leave the floor, run into a corner, and start typing because that's the way their world works when it doesn't need to, right? There's a way to make technology that the giants have, that slices servicing, like all these companies that can take away the infrastructure advantage these huge organizations have and bring it back to the person who actually cares about the business, who has an ownership in the business, is super productive, and they love it.
And so when you're going into a new customer, is there what's the sales slash adoption cycle look like? So a lot of us or a lot of folks in the audience that are selling to SMBs, it's they're hard to reach, they're hard to get it to adopt, and then oftentimes they lose interest, right? So they say, "Oh, I love this product, I can't wait to use it." They sign up, and 90 days later, you're like, "Wait a minute, why aren't you ever logging in? You loved it when I met you." And they're like, "Oh, I moved on, my kids are on spring break or whatever." Like they just kind of lose interest. How do you guys? Because it's probably something when you walk in and go, "I'm going to take your supply and ordering off your hands." They're like, "Oh, that sounds great," but then reality sets in. Somebody owns that function. They don't want to do it your way. How do you guys deal with that?
So I think it's gotten harder than it was in the old days. In the old days, you could basically give somebody a tool and they're like, this is a nice part of my ecosystem. Now they're so behind the eight ball that they need the cures to cancer, right? So one of the sales methodologies that I have always espoused is find one person's very, very particular problem. Like we originally just did bloggers for Squarespace. For some, all just sellers. For Odeco, it's just coffee shops. And get so deep in it that you change their lives. And then you can back off and realize what you don't have to actually bring to bear. So we got trucks running around a city as a teeny company, and we've got like people stacking shelves in the morning because we want to get to the point where they absolutely find us to be essential. And you get this advocacy group of customers who just love you and love you not just as this is a nifty product, but this is my soul. Our customers actually formed together at Christmas and brought us Christmas gifts, because we got to that point. Now it's not scalable and you have to sort of ratchet back and find out where the hybrid is, but you can't sell to the small business world anymore with a small effect, which is so distressing because you can make a spreadsheet be like, this will save him $5,000. It's gonna be amazing. They should give a shit. They can't.
But it does sound like, I mean, Anne made this point earlier about Zendesk, and they were doing meetups every month in different cities around the country. A lot of these businesses get started by building some community and brand affinities. Lear talked about it with Slice, with these merchants who end up really loving you. And you guys have, I know when you and I've talked, you're doing some things to cultivate that. Talk a little about some of the unique things that you're doing to create that love.
So I think it ultimately starts to come from just actually loving your customer, like actually loving your customer, finding ways to make them supportive. It turns into a ton of hacks, right? So we try to create the community amongst those customers that they can share in. We give them information they don't have. We don't quite go to the babysitting line, but we get damn close to it. Just because everything you can do to make them feel like you're on their side of the fence, that it's us together facing this problem and not us trying to help you.
That's a great point, by the way. That the optics of that way of thinking of it's us together against the world. That's a pretty powerful concept.
It is, and unfortunately, not all tech companies have taken that approach. So just as it is very hard for them to take out their credit card to put down one more charge because they're now putting 15 on this card and they don't know if they're gonna be able to manage it. They've had a lot of tech companies come there and be like, it's free. It's great. It's only $1,000 to fix a review in 5 years, but it's free, right? So they think that we are no longer best actors. So you have to stand out in a way that shows that you really care about their problems so that you can develop that trust again where they're like, oh, these guys actually want me to make a better business. It's not just a matter of optimizing their bottom line, right? So being super transparent with your customer about how you're doing things. Like we found that people are paying, which I'm sure it's cited, 3 times this cup price the cup price actually has to be. So a lot of not GGV, but a lot of VCs are like, just charge the whole amount. It's amazing. You're like, I have $1 billion tomorrow. But then someone else will come in and be like, oh, I'm $10 cheaper, right? And your customer would immediately lose faith for you forever. So better to say, this is what we can gain. How do we split this fairly? Like where can we participate? Where can you participate? And that ends up getting fans. And even though small businesses don't have a lot of unity points, they do really share amongst each other things that are valuable. So you can get a lot of momentum just by getting a fanatical first cohort of customers. It gets you a semi-fanatical second cohort, and it continuously stretches out from just those first early, 1,000 users.
And I'm going to ask you another question, but I want, if you guys have any questions, think of it right now, and I'll come to you next. What did you learn from, Squarespace, you guys were early in this whole genre. I mean, obviously we talked earlier about Intuit being the OG of SMB, but, we sort of think of as like post AWS, post iPhone, that kind of 2008, 2010 is when a lot of this stuff started to really take off. And you guys were in the market in SMB. What did you learn from that experience back then?
So I think we learned the real truth that everyone's reinforced today is that they buy like consumers. We were one of the first people to say, let's give them an annual plan. Everyone's like, what the? Like, because we wanted to basically offer a discount because we knew that consumers like sales and maybe small businesses like sales too. So we went through a huge arc of discovery with those customers in the early days of just trying to marry the enterprise value with the small business or consumer mentality. We also, I think, learned there, which is something I've not lost. Like every company I've built, we've tried to find the story in us that matches to them. So in Squarespace, we hired designers. We were like oozing designers. We literally put in a leather floor in our office, which is a horrible idea. Never ever do it.
Sound good.
It was tragic, and it got ripped up a few months later. But the idea was that we were going to be beautiful, and the customer was going to be beautiful. For some all, we had data analysts like coming out of every which corner because we wanted data to be transparent. We pushed innovative salary transparency, all these different ideas because we believed it should be here. At Deco, we live the coffee shop. Our office is morphing into a coffee shop. We mandate that people go to the coffee shops. Like the more you can get into those stories, the better. And we figured that out in the old days in Squarespace was just how much the value of making them feel like they were being thanked for and allowed to speak in a beautiful tone meant to them.